Let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're heading into one of the absolute most unforgiving environments on the planet, the Namib Desert, to track a really incredible story of survival. The Namib is the oldest desert in the world. And yeah, at first glance, it looks pretty desolate, but it's actually the backdrop for some of the most mind-blowing ecological adaptations you'll ever see. We're going to look at how life doesn't just scrape by here, but actually masters these extreme conditions.
To really set the scene, you only need to know one number: 20. That's it, just 20. This entire landscape gets a measly 20 millimeters of rain in a whole year. It's exceptionally dry, totally baked by the relentless sun, and honestly, it seems completely impossible for any large mammals to even exist here, let alone thrive. Which of course brings us to the ultimate paradox of the Namib. How on earth does a giant mammal, something that usually needs massive amounts of food and water every single day, survive in what's essentially an endless sandbox? Well, we're focusing on the super rare desert elephants today. They live in the dry river valleys like the Hoanib Valley and somehow navigate a landscape that would literally defeat almost any other large animal.
Our main character today is an alpha cow named Clarissa. And if you compare Clarissa's family to your typical savanna elephants, it perfectly shows how they've totally rewired their biology and behavior for this barren valley. Instead of those massive, sometimes destructive herds on the savanna, Clarissa's group is small and highly specialized. They can't afford to be reckless with resources, right? So they don't uproot trees. They just gently pluck the protein-rich shoots off the Anna tree so it keeps growing. They even nurse their calves, like Clarissa's youngest, Maya, for twice as long just to make sure they get enough protein. Plus, to reach whatever scattered food is out there, they've developed these incredible climbing skills that totally blow their savanna cousins out of the water.
All right, let's get into section 1, Masters of Desert Adaptation, Thriving on the Hidden Moisture of the Namib.
Because it's definitely not just the elephants adapting to this bone-dry reality. Outside those dry riverbeds, the vegetation just completely vanishes into pure sand. So extreme specialists out there have to rely on this bizarre coastal weather phenomenon. To figure out how anything survives the dunes, we've got to ask, where does fog even come from in a desert that barely gets rain?
It's an absolutely brilliant atmospheric engine that actually blankets this desert in life-saving mist about 200 days a year. Here's how it works. The Namib is one of those rare deserts that stretches right down to the ocean. Out there, the cold Antarctic Benguela current chills the seawater down to a crisp 12 degrees Celsius. When that freezing water hits the super warm, dry desert air at the coast, you'd think, okay, evaporation. But the air over the land is just so hot that the moisture can't rise to form rain clouds. Instead, it forms this thick, heavy fog that just rolls hundreds of kilometers inland, creeping right into those dry valleys to deliver moisture. And microscopic life uses this weather event in just brilliant ways. Take the Namib Desert beetle. This little guy is no bigger than your fingernail, but it literally uses its own body as a customized water tower. It just climbed up a sand dune and waits for the fog. As the mist rolls in, tiny, microscopic droplets of dampness condense on its specially adapted bumpy shell. Over time, those tiny particles merge until one heavy drop of water slowly forms. Then, the beetle just tilts forward, and the drop rolls straight down into its mouth. I mean, that is just a masterpiece of evolutionary design.
But it's not just the insects. While Clarissa's elephant family is sleeping through the cool night, this whole miniature world of hyper-adapted reptiles takes over the dunes. These are the night shift survivors. You've got the Namib sand gecko, right? It has webbed feet that work like tiny little shovels to dig 1-meter-deep tunnels incredibly fast, just to hide from the lethal sun that's coming in the morning. Then there's the sidewinding adder, a snake that gets absolutely all its liquid from its food by burying itself completely in the sand to ambush prey. And roaming around is the massive Namaqua chameleon. It's the biggest reptile in the desert, and it literally hunts beetles in dead riverbeds that haven't seen flowing water in 500 years.
Moving on to section 2, the cruel peak of drought, when the fog vanishes and the ecosystem is pushed to the brink. Because that life-saving fog, it doesn't last. As winter ends, the fog clears out, and we hit a brutally terrifying phase of this survival arc. When temperatures hit 40 degrees Celsius in the shade, the landscape turns into an absolute oven. It's suffocating. And remember, elephants can't sweat. Their only way to cool down is by fanning those massive ears to circulate blood. But at 40 degrees, it's just not enough. Clarissa's youngest calf, Maya, actually reaches her lethal limit and collapses in the baking heat. It's an incredibly tense, desperate moment for the family.
But here's the crazy part. Even during this brutal heat wave, the elephants are actually the lifeline for the whole ecosystem. It's a fascinating dynamic called the elephant economy. Since the sun has wiped out most of the plants, Clarissa's family becomes the biological engine for the valley. They're strong enough to smash apart massive dead trees to eat the wood. But their digestive systems only process about 60% of that tough stuff. The rest, which is full of vital, undigested seeds and nutrients, comes out in their dung. So in this totally barren wasteland, scavengers like helmeted guinea fowl and even baboons literally have to eat directly from the elephant dung just to survive the drought.
Eating hardwood takes a massive toll on the body over time, though. Just look at the epic 60-year life of the aging bull elephant known as One Tusk. Born right there in the Hoanib Valley, he spent decades mastering this desert. By year 30, he actually loses his right tusk in a vicious fight, which gets him his name and makes him the undisputed king of the herd. But biology has its limits. Elephants only grow their molars back 6 times. That's it. By year 55, One Tusk wears out his 6th and final set of teeth on those rough desert branches. And by year 60, after walking a mind-boggling 400,000 kilometers across the sand in his lifetime, his strength finally gives out. He can't chew the wood anymore, which means he can't sustain his massive body, and he starts falling behind the herd.
Which brings us to Section 3, the brutal coastal ecosystem. Desperate migrations in search of food and water.
With the valley completely stripped of food, the herd has to move, and that triggers this wild domino effect across the landscape. Animals like resident jackals end up abandoning the elephants and migrating hundreds of kilometers to the ocean. And what they find on the coast highlights the harsh reality of extreme resource scarcity. Up to 100,000 brown fur seals gather on these beaches. The mothers leave their newborns in these massive crowded nurseries or kindergartens while they head out to sea to hunt. But they often misjudge the tide. The water rushes in, washing these clumsy, helpless pups into the violent surf. A lot of them sadly drown and wash back onto the shore. But those migrating jackals, they show up right on time to scavenge. As tragic as it is, losing those baby seals is exactly what keeps the migrating jackals from starving. Meanwhile, deep inland, one of the rarest predators on Earth is using this punishing drought to their total advantage. We're talking about legendary desert lions. There might only be 20 to 50 of them left on the planet. They wait patiently at a hidden emerald oasis. It's such a brilliant, calculated strategy. They know that exhausted, dehydrated animals, like the migrating oryx, will eventually have absolutely no choice but to come to the water. The lionesses don't even have to waste energy chasing them across the dunes. They just wait, watch, and ambush when the prey is completely exhausted.
Okay, Section 4, Rebirth and Generational Knowledge, the Ultimate Evolutionary Advantage.
As the drought hits its absolute deadliest peak and the desert looks completely hopeless, survival really boils down to one invisible asset: memory. The circle of life out here is cruel, for sure, but it is brutally efficient. Old One Tusk, who is now just too weak to keep up, sadly succumbs to hunger right before the seasonal rains come. His incredible 60-year journey ends. But nothing is wasted in the Namib. His passing provides a massive, critical meal for the jackals that are heading back from their coastal migration, fueling the ecosystem one last time.
For the rest of the herd, this is exactly where Clarissa proves herself as an alpha. She's not just an animal, she is a living, breathing survival encyclopedia for her family. When they are pushed right to the edge of dehydration, she pulls from decades of experience. She actually remembers secret hidden watering holes from when she was a baby and leads the herd there just in time to save little Maya. And when the massive, blinding sandstorms blow in from the coast, she doesn't panic at all. She recognizes the atmospheric shift as a sign that heavy rain is coming. Instinctively, she knows to get her family out of the dry riverbeds immediately. And that memory? It literally saves them all from the raging flash floods that tear through the canyons right after the rain starts. The climax of this whole story brings just this immense wave of relief. The rare, heavy rains finally pour down, flooding 100 kilometers of the desert, washing away that awful drought and turning the dusty Hoanib Valley bright, vibrant green. Clarissa's family makes it back to their home range safe and sound, with plenty of fresh shoots to eat. And it's a beautiful merging of generations, too. Clarissa is actually pregnant with a new calf carrying the late One Tusk's genes, making sure his remarkable strength and intelligence live on in the valley for decades to come. So what is the real value of generational knowledge here? What does Clarissa's encyclopedic memory teach us about the role of elders when it comes to surviving shifting, changing climates? You know, the wisdom of the desert elephant might actually be one of the most relevant lessons for humanity right now.
As we face our own increasing climatic extremes, having the deep knowledge to know exactly where the hidden lifelines are and knowing exactly when it's time to move to higher ground might just be our ultimate key to survival. Thanks for joining me on this explainer. I hope you found it as fascinating as I did.